Hello, everyone, and welcome to College Cooking 101, Finding Confidence in Your College Kitchen. I'm Kathleen Nagaki from the Furman Counseling Center, and I am thrilled to be hosting this event as part of this year's Feel Well, Do Well programming. We are so excited that you're here. Everyone who registered for this webinar should receive an email with a copy of Carly's recipe packet. Tonight's webinar will be recorded and posted to Barnard's webpage, along with the 2 recipes that Carly will be cooking tonight. So keep an eye out for that. During tonight's webinar, we really want to hear from you. This is a great opportunity to gain some new knowledge and learn tips. So please submit any and all questions that you have at any time using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will have time for some questions while Carly is cooking, as well as at the end. And there are no wrong questions. Anything you want to know, please ask. This event was inspired by conversations with Barnard students who are either living at home or living in apartments because of the pandemic. Without being able to access the dining halls, many students are trying to learn how to cook, grocery shop, and plan meals for the first time, most of them on a tight budget, while also juggling school and other responsibilities, which is a lot. So in response to what we've been hearing, we've brought in a wonderful alumna to help us all learn a few new skills. It is my pleasure to introduce Carly Wertheim, Barnard class of 2014. I know Carly from a cooking lesson that she gave in one of the dorm kitchens in Brooks Hall as part of Barnard's Get Healthy Wellness class a few years ago. Carly Wertheim is a nutritionist and health supportive chef. She's the founder of Carly's Wellness Kitchen, which offers nutrition counseling, hands-on culinary training, and food as medicine workshops. Carly received a Master's of Science in Nutrition from Columbia University, and she completed her culinary training at the Natural Gourmet Institute in New York City. Her food philosophy is guided by vibrant colors, inspired by nature's bounty, and most importantly, driven by what your body needs to feel its best and find balance. You can learn more about her work at carlyswellnesskitchen.com. Carly joins us this evening from California. Carly, it is so great to have you with us.
Hi, Kathleen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be sharing this food with some of the students, wherever they might be. Well, I just want to start by saying when I was really preparing and thinking about this class, I was thinking about my own Barnard days and reflecting on how it was my time at Barnard when I started to have to grocery shop for myself and cook my own meals as an upperclassman that I started to develop this love and passion for food and nutrition, and what later led me to go on to pursue this career in food. And it was those skills that you are building right now that I utilize every day, that Kathleen has to utilize, and that I now get to share with the clients that I work with and in the workshops that I do like this one. So it's very much my pleasure to do this because we all have to eat, right? We all need to nourish our bodies. And I like to make that process as fun and enjoyable and creative and empowering as possible. So it's my hope that during the course of this hour, you are going to walk away just feeling a little bit more empowered and inspired to get into the kitchen and cook yourself some nourishing food. And that process slowly will become more easeful and more enjoyable the more that you do it. So as Kathleen said, we want to make this as interactive as possible. I want to feel like you are sitting in my kitchen here with me, cooking alongside me, asking questions. So please do utilize that question and answer feature that we have in the Zoom webinar. And I want to get started by asking you a question. I want you to think about these last couple months for yourself and what has your cooking experience been like? Take a little reflection to think about, have you been cooking yourselves, meals more than you used to? What have you been making for yourself? What's felt easy and enjoyable, or what's felt a little bit more challenging and sticky? And I want to actually hear from a couple students. So what have been the challenges and what are you learning? And I want us to think about what we're learning. Has it been that you left a pot of rice on the stove just a little bit too long and you had to discover the hard way that that pot is pretty hard to clean and it has to soak in some water overnight to be able to lift that off? Have you discovered the best grocery store and the best time to go to Trader Joe's, you know, to avoid that monster long line? Are you discovering how much produce that you can actually go through in the week and how long, you know, the lettuce can sit in there before it starts to wilt or that pot of soup turns a little sour? Is anyone writing in of their lessons learned?
I haven't heard anything yet.
Great. Well, hopefully they'll start coming in. And while we're also thinking about that question, I want us to be thinking about the challenges that have been coming up. What might have felt hard for you? And after I can hear from some students about what's been feeling hard and challenging, I can try and direct this class even more as possible. So we can wait for a second to see if some questions are coming in or some challenges or triumphs in the kitchen. But you know, I do this work pretty frequently and I have a lot of common answers that I hear to that. So I'm wondering if some of students are thinking, it feels just challenging to get to the grocery store. I don't have enough time. I don't know what to make. It costs money.
Yes,
whatever those.
We actually just got a comment, and just for everyone who is just joining us, the chat feature is disabled, but the Q&A is where we would love for you to put your questions. So we have one person who is saying that organic food is really expensive.
Great, yeah. All right, so we can talk about that as we work through.
And we have another question or comment around not knowing which produce should be stored on the counter versus in the refrigerator.
Awesome. Okay, we can definitely cover that. Okay, so those are awesome questions. We'll circle, I think, to some of those as we move through the cooking demos, because we are going to be making these 2 different dishes tonight. That's going to put all of this into practice. So I want to think about the challenges that maybe we're talking about and think about a solution. And the solution that I teach in my practice to my clients and in my workshops is this idea of batch cooking. So if you are new to the idea of batch cooking, this is the concept that what we're going to do is spend the time up front. I like to do it over the weekends when I have a little bit more time, and do our meal planning, our grocery shopping, and our cooking, meal prep, so that we have food to enjoy and nourish our bodies with as the week goes faster and on, and we just need to have a meal. So I want to pause there to ask that if anyone is cooking along from home, make sure that their oven is turned on. We're going to be setting it to 400, and that's going to take some time to get going. So please do that if you haven't already. So batch cooking, right? We can do this as a way to create ease during the rest of our week. And now I hear from a lot of people, well, that sounds really time consuming in itself. And yes, it is. I'm not going to lie. To take and devote a significant portion of, you know, a weekend morning to your cooking is going to take some thought and practice, but trust me, it will get faster and easier. And you're not having to go back meal by meal, day by day to do the cooking, to run to the grocery store again, to do the kitchen cleanup. You're actually going to be saving yourself a lot of time throughout the rest of the week. It is going to be more cost effective if you can go to the grocery store with an idea of exactly what you want to be making. You're going to go in with that laser focus to make sure that the things that you bring home are actually going to translate to meals that you can cook. You are going to be building up your culinary skills, having some fun in the kitchen, and really setting yourself up to nourish your body. All right, so let's go through, they're going to be these 5 different steps that I like to teach for batch cooking. And we're going to get to those after we've had a second to get our food started. So I'm kind of running this as if we're doing a little batch cooking, right? We're going to be making this rainbow sheet pan dinner and some overnight oats. And my hope is that we're going to make this in the next like 30, 40 minutes all together and have dinner for about 4 days and some breakfasts for the week as well. So what we're going to do, if you have your recipe packet, is get started with our sweet potato. So I am really a huge fan of roasting. You can roast vegetables, you can roast proteins, and you're going to be using a very similar step every time that you roast. So it's very translatable to a large different number of foods. So the idea of this rainbow roasted sheet pan chicken dinner, which can also be made with the chickpeas if you want to do a vegetarian version, is that we're gonna just get everything into the oven with some good seasoning and let the oven do the work for us. We can sit back, maybe do a little studying, cook our breakfast, and have everything ready to go for dinner. So we got our oven set to 400. We've got our sweet potato, and we are going to grab our knife and our cutting board. So knives, how do you know a knife to choose? How do you use a knife? How do we keep kitchen safe? So I have two different chef's knives out here. This is a 6-inch and an 8-inch, and it's really gonna be a matter of personal preference. We want the knife to feel like a cozy extension of our arm, of our hand. And to get a good grip on the knife, I'd like you to pick yours up, maybe go run into the kitchen and grab your knife. And you can imagine like bicycle handlebars that you are gripping and holding. And I want you to do the same thing with the handle of your knife. So right up to the blade, we're gonna be making a nice tight fist with the handlebar. But after that, we want to take our index finger and sort of hoist it up around the actual blade. So this is really like choking up, as you would like choke up on a baseball bat. We're choking up on the knife and also gripping on this thumb side. So as you can see, I got my grip, and that knife is really a nice extension of my arm. So we're gonna start off with this sweet potato by just trimming the ends. And you can grab a little compost pail or place where we're gonna put all of our scraps. So the little scraps can go away. We want to cut this now and break it down. So let's cut it right through the center together. And now we're all of a sudden needing to realize, what are we doing with our left hand to make sure that we stay safe as we are wielding this knife? Well, as you can see, I put fingers on both sides of that potato, held it together, and then pushed the knife through. Now, when it comes to dicing, we want to make a bear claw with our other hand. So I taught a lot of Brooklyn, like elementary school students in classes during my years in New York. And so we call that the bear claw, and that's how you are gonna keep your fingers safe. You're basically just trying to keep your knuckles out with your fingers tucked under. And then that way, you know, fingers aren't, they're nice and protected there. So first we're gonna do another cut down. So now we've got quarters with our sweet potato. And we wanna do about 1/2-inch chunks. So that is gonna look like, with my bear claw, something like that. All right, so let's go ahead. We're gonna cut up our sweet potato. And I want us to think about our 5 steps to batch cooking. So the first step is deciding what it is that we're gonna be eating for the week, right? We have to do our meal prep and planning. So here we've decided to do rainbow roasted sheet pan and veggies, some overnight oats. You have that recipe packet from me, and you can start to create some meal plans of your own. I like to go on to food blogs like Naturally Ella, Love and Lemons, what is Oshi Glows. Those are some really great ones. Recipes online are awesome because they're free, but you can also, you know, get cookbooks from the library and start to build up your culinary inspiration that way. Just to check in real fast, here I have my sweet potato down on the sheet, and now we're talking about roasting again. So I'm gonna be kind of jumping in and out with the cooking and the batch cooking ideas. Olive oil and salt is all you need to roast, that and a hot oven. Well, I'm gonna drizzle some olive oil all over the sweet potato, sprinkle it with some sea salt, give it a little bit of a toss, a spread out on the sheet, and pop it into my oven.
Carly, what's a good amount of olive oil?
A good amount of olive oil for that amount, it was about 1 tablespoon there.
Thanks.
Sure. So we've decided what we want to eat for the week. We can use a meal plan template like the one that you got in your recipe packet. And you have to think about how many meals it is that you are going to be eating for that week, right? Are you going to be eating just breakfasts, just lunches? Do you need to have your dinners for yourselves? Do you need snacks? Are you sharing these meals with others? How many servings would you be willing to eat that dinner for? So the idea really of batch cooking is that we're creating quantity. So I like to recommend a dish with somewhere between 4 to 6 servings, so you can really make the most out of that. Now, if it's something that you just don't want to eat that much of, like maybe you say you make a big pot of chili, but you only want to eat it for 3 servings, that's where we really get to utilize the freezer. So we can individually portion out the rest of that chili into serving size containers, freeze it, and then kind of add foods from the freezer into our weekly meals as we go on maybe another week. We have to then, step number 2 is make a grocery shopping list. And here I was talking about that idea that if we go in with a plan to the grocery store, we are going to be very efficient and save a lot of money in the end. I like to make my grocery shopping list in categories so I can find everything pretty easily. I look for the produce and I write all the produce down together. And then I look and find all of the perishables together. Perishables are going to be things in the inside of the grocery store aisles. And those I also call stockables, or the non-perishables, or the stockables. So we want to look into our kitchen and see, are we running low on some olive oil or salt or spices, the things that, you know, we can really keep for a longer time. And that way we are building up slowly our pantry. And as we build up our pantry, we're much more easily able to make dishes that can just come together really quick. Let's say we have a jar of tomato sauce and we have some pasta, and then we just happen to have, you know, a broccoli or cauliflower. Boom, dinner can come together. And I also recommend at the grocery store utilizing the deal coupons that you often find right when you walk into the store. You can see what's on sale and be flexible with the recipes. So, you know, if you are planning to do a salad, for instance, and the romaine is more expensive, but the kale is less or the arugula is less, know things that you can swap around to be shopping for price. Step number 3 was to do the grocery shopping, and step number 4 is to get into the kitchen and do our batch cooking, right? Utilize a friend or family member. Make this an engaging activity that you all can do together. Make it go faster, make the cleanup happen. Maybe if someone cooks, someone cleans, and you swap the next week. And then step number 5 is to reheat and eat whenever it's time. So with this dish, we have that sweet potato in the oven first because it's going to take the longest compared to the other veggies that we're going to be prepping and chopping and the chicken. So I want to do a little bit more prep with you all now as we can practice our knife skills and keep working through this dish together. So rainbow here, we've got our red, we had the sweet potato for some orange. I got a yellow crookneck squash, a green zucchini, green beautiful broccoli. So we are going to just start to break down these different vegetables and put them all into a bowl together. So I love to think about the meals that we're making and think about the colors as composition and feasting for our eyes. But it's also kind of a fun thing to note that the different colors correlate to different phytochemicals, phyto being plant in Latin. So these are our plant chemicals that really nourish our bodies, provide us with antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds. So the more colors, the different colors correlating to different phytochemicals are really feeding our body and our mind that way. With these bell peppers, I'd like to encourage us to chop them kind of like into, again, 1/2-inch squares. You can cut long strips first. So I got my bear claw going, long strips that then can be broken down. So with our knife skills and cutting veggies or fruits, we're always trying to make the component smaller and smaller in kind of like a consecutive process. So first we can start with long strips, and those long strips now bunched up can go down into cubes. So we work through that way. The vegetables in this recipe are by no means fixed. You get to decide what you want or what's available at the market, what feels in season, what might have been on sale that week. And I'm using a wide variety to show you how we can do just that. The real key here is cutting our vegetables in a way so that they'll all end up cooked at the same time. And the key to that is understanding the water content. So that sweet potato was really dense. It had really the lowest water content of the rest of these veggies. And so that's going in first to get a head start. Our Carrots would be similar. Our winter squash would be similar. You could think of that sweet potato and replace it with any type of root vegetable. Now that we're moving into fall, I really love cooking just sweet potatoes in big batch quantities for the week to eat them with some quick scrambled eggs or as a side with another protein and some leafy greens with a salad. Our zucchini we're breaking down in a very similar way. We're gonna do half or quarter moons. So we're breaking the zucchini into its quarters, bare clawing with our other hand and working our way down this zucchini. With roasting times, with cooking times, it's all about the size. Things that are cut in a similar size of that same vegetable will cook in a similar time. So it doesn't even matter so much if it was just zucchini, what size I'm cooking it, but that they're all the same. Now, because we're using different veggies, I'm trying to make it such that they'll all turn out somewhat at the same point. So we got our green. Let's now do this broccoli. Broccoli floret could be replaced by a cauliflower if you wanted to get that cruciferous vegetable in. For the broccoli, we're going to remove this toughest part of the stalk and now break it down into small florets. So broccoli left in a floret, maybe this size, roasted on its own, would probably take 25 minutes. But I want to make this faster. So what am I going to do? Cut it smaller, right? So let's make this into nice small florets that are going to cook similarly to that squash we just cut up. That's going to be something more like that guy. All right, and we'll mix these all together in the same bowl. Kathleen, are any questions popping up from students, or should we now go back and maybe revisit some of those questions that people brought up at the beginning while I work my way through this broccoli?
Could you say more about the storing of produce? Like should you keep it in your fridge? Is it okay on the counter?
Awesome question. So it just depends on what kind of produce. So what you see out on the counter right now was just really taken out for today's class. The only produce that I like to store on the counter is going to be heartier root veggies that we were just talking about. Those can stay stored on the counter or in a pantry, like down away from light. That's really what's most important. Same thing for onions, garlic, apples could stay out. You know when you walk around the grocery store and some things are refrigerated and some things are kind of just like left in those heaps?
Yes.
So that's going to be similar to what we'd want to put in the fridge versus on the counter. But if in doubt, just keep it in the fridge, especially if it's a time of the year where it's hot and humid. It'll just stay stored longer in the fridge.
That's so helpful, Carly. And what about, can you say a little more too about freezing food? Like, does it have to be chilled before you freeze it? How long can it stay in there?
Oh, awesome question. So we really want to utilize that freezer. The freezer is the best friend for batch cooking because, like I said, you can start to really build up a repertoire of dishes to pull out. And depending on what you've made, it can stay in there for up to 6 months. So animal proteins, I recommend only 3 months, but if it's a veggie-based dish, it can be for 6 months. I like for storing things in the freezer to allow them to cool to room temperature or stick them in the fridge for a while before moving them into the freezer. But that has more to do about the type of container that you're storing it in. So if you're trying to store something in plastic, you really want to let that food cool off before putting it in a plastic storage container so that you get the least amount of the plastic chemicals into the food. And if you're utilizing a glass storage container, really just being mindful to make sure that that glass isn't going from piping hot to freezing super quickly to prevent it from breaking. I've had my fair share of broken glass in the freezer, turning the wrong way, and it has a lot to do with just how much you fill it up. Yeah. So you always want to leave a large amount of headspace in that jar, like a good inch.
If people are buying fresh produce, how long can they expect it to stay fresh?
All right, so fresh produce, it depends so much. And I want to answer that question after we talk a little bit about prepping the chicken so we can, start to get this cooking, and we'll circle back to that.
Excellent.
So this dish can really take any different type of protein. I've made this with cubed tofu before, cubed tempeh, other types of beans, other types of animal proteins like salmon. So right now we're doing a boneless, skinless chicken breast because it's pretty easy. And you want about 1 pound of it for this dish. This is about 1.5 pounds. So I'm going to utilize a little bit less than these 2 breasts. I get a lot of fear around cooking poultry in kitchens from folks. And so I wanted to demystify a little bit how to handle the chicken so you do not have anything to worry about. And the key here is that we want it to touch as few of surfaces as possible. So you're actually not going to rinse it in the sink. You're just going to go directly from the container to either your cutting board or a piece of paper towel to kind of blot it off if there's a lot of moisture. This chicken breast does not look super moist, but I'm still going to give it a little pat and put it down on the cutting board. If you are nervous about this at all, I love the idea of having 1 cutting board for your animal proteins and 1 cutting board for your fruit and veg, and really keeping those separate. If you're using the same cutting board, you can always just sterilize it after by putting it into the dishwasher or just making sure you're using really hot soap, really hot water with some soap. The next thing we want to do is cut this chicken breast into little pieces. And so again, we're thinking about the size of the chicken for the veggies. And I want to kind of create these little 1-inch cubes that will be done in time. I'm going to be putting these into a different bowl because I'm running out of space. So let's do 1-inch cubes. They're going to look about so. And this whole sheet pan is going to be cooking for about 15, maybe 20 more minutes after it goes back in. And that's about the time that these chicken cubes need to finish cooking. So what do we do after we've worked with our chicken? So I mentioned we're gonna kind of clean the cutting board, the knife, the surfaces that they've used. And we're gonna wash our hands really well, but then we're gonna kind of forget about it because after the chicken gets cooked to a high enough temperature, and I'll show you how to know when that chicken is done, you no longer have to be concerned. Did that bring up any questions or fears for people around cooking chicken? Has that been a concern of yours before as a student or cooking at home? I know I lived with a roommate once who had a very strong fear of cooking chicken, and she would ask that someone else did it entirely. She didn't want to touch it.
I've definitely heard that from some students, and that's so helpful to know about the not needing to rinse it. I feel like that's been such a myth out there that you should be rinsing it first.
You know what it does? It actually spreads the bacteria into the sink. And then most folks don't go and sanitize their sink and wipe it down. So then it's staying in there. So just avoiding extra places of possible contamination there.
Carly, we do actually have a question about how to wash produce before preparing it.
All right, let's hear it.
Just how to do that. And is it hot water, cold water?
Yeah, sure. I like cold water and just a good thorough rinse. Again, it's always going to depend on what kind of produce we're working with. I'm a really big fan of a salad spinner for doing any type of leafy greens and even things like cauliflower and broccoli, where you can fill up that basin, have the broccoli or cauliflower greens in the mesh bowl and soak them in there, and then lift them out, drain out the water, and be able to pump it dry. So that's one nice way. You don't really need any special washes, like veggie washes. It's kind of more of just like a common sense. If it looks dirty, you want to get a little bit of the dirt off. But more than that, we're good to go, especially if it's going to be cooked versus eaten raw. For raw, we always want to make sure we're doing a good job in cleaning it. But
thank you.
Cooking can be, yes, a little bit less stress. So I'm stopping there with the chicken. That was about my pound. I'm going to move this out of the way. Now, again, sanitation. I am going to keep my left hand, my chickeny hands, and I like this method, and my right hand, my touch other things hands. So I'm not having to go back and forth, and because I'm going to have to kind of toss this chicken up to get it in all of the yummy flavors. So you know what, actually, I'm gonna wash both my hands and then toss up the chicken.
We can't do that enough these days.
We cannot do it enough these days. Gentle reminder. All right. So the reason why I think this is a fun one is we're just adding our flavor into these veggies. And then again, the oven's doing the rest of it for us. It's really few ingredients at this point. We're almost there. The veggie prep and cutting the chicken was most of the work. So I'm a huge fan of Italian seasoning because it's a blend of different herbs. So this one has like marjoram, thyme, what else? Rosemary, sage, oregano. So it's nice. You don't have to buy so many spices. You can just have it like all in one. And our spices really only stay, or herbs and spices only stay fresh or so for like 6 months. So it's better to buy the smallest quantity that you can and make sure you're actually using it. And the herb blends and spice blends allow us to really do that. So I'm dumping about like a tablespoon or 2 on both of these. This is really hard to mess up. Like putting too much of that stuff is not a problem. Don't be worried. And then the other flavor is garlic powder, which is a tip and trick that I love, using garlic powder for the garlic flavor. And this is just like allowing us to cut down on steps. You know, we don't have to chop up some garlic. We can just use our beautiful garlic powder for flavor. We're gonna do some cracked black pepper, grind it on in there. You can omit this if pepper's not your thing. And salt. So this is gonna be about a ½ teaspoon, I'd say. I'm gonna eyeball it here.
And you can really substitute whatever spices you want if you.
Oh my gosh, yes, we could do this as an entirely different flavor profile. Here's the olive oil going on. So I was talking about herb blends. You could do a spice blend like a chili powder and have a completely different flavor profile that had more of, you know, the chili, oregano, cinnamon, those spices going on. This is more of like an Italian thing that we're doing here, at least Italian inspired. So a little bit of lemon juice and zest now. The zest is the peel on the outside of the lemon. And I think of the zest as like a free ingredient. If you're getting a lemon, utilize the zest, so much flavor and aroma. We just want to zest the very outer layer of the lemon, not going into the white pith, which is going to be more bitter, but really just getting that lovely citrus on the outside. So we're going to utilize a whole lemon juice and zest and get that in here all mixed up. So our sweet potatoes are probably ready for these to jump in. So we're going to get this all mixed up and tossed in there as fast as we can now. And I'm smelling this zest. It's wonderful. It's very fresh and enlightening. And one thing I love to do with the lemon rind, after I've juiced it, if you have a dishwasher disposal, is to throw it down into the disposal and let the disposal break it up and release all those amazing lemon aromas. It will really freshen up your kitchen space when you're in there. Lemon zest, lemon juice, and then we will toss it and get it into the oven. All right. So I mentioned we could do this with other veggie proteins. We'd want to chop our tofu cubes into about 1/4-inch cubes as well. Same thing with the tempeh. If you're doing the chickpeas, I'll mention you'll be straining the chickpeas, rinsing them, and then doing the same process here. All right, let's get our.
We have one more question coming in about herbs. Is there a difference in flavor if you were to use dried versus fresh herbs?
Ooh, great question. So there isn't a difference in the actual flavor of the herb, but there is a difference in the concentration of the flavor in the herb.
I think that's what the question was, the amount. Oh, that's exactly right.
Great. So the dried spices are about 3 times stronger. So if you see a recipe that calls for fresh, but you have dried, reduce it by 1/3 and you'll get there, the amount that you need.
That's so helpful.
Sure, and I building up a spice pantry and an herb pantry, I think is a really worthwhile investment, especially if you're sharing space with other folks. This is the key to being able to create really flavorful and different dishes, you know, so that you're not just doing the same plain veggie or chicken combo every night, but really allowing your taste buds to travel around the globe. Let's go check on these sweet potatoes and pull them out and add the rest of what we've got here onto a pan. All right, so I want to show you all first. and get this in the screen for you. All right, sweet potatoes are cooking. Let me get this into the hot pan. All right, so we are gonna do all of the veggies on this sheet and add those in there. And if we have room, we'll add the chicken, but I'm thinking we're gonna utilize a second sheet pan as well. So we wanna get everything out into as much of a single layer as we can. Can everyone see what I'm doing here? All right, so there's that beautiful rainbow, right? Lots of different colors, really visually appealing. And that's a nice spread. So the chicken would be a little cramped in there, so I'm gonna put it on another sheet pan. And it turns out a little differently every time I do it, depending on, you know, how big that squash is, and what veggies we're using. So chicken can get spread out as well. Here's a nice spread there. But the beauty is that hopefully this will all be done at the same time in time for dinner. All right, chicken spread, and into the oven we go. I have the racks set to about the middle of the oven, which is where I like to leave them, and baking away. All right, so now we get to make breakfast for tomorrow. This is a recipe you will come back to again and again throughout your life, whether or not you need a dish on the run to grab and go, or just want something really tasty. So the overnight oats. I like this because in the morning, you don't have to put a pot of water on to boil. You just have to reach into the fridge and grab and go. So let's gather up our ingredients that we're gonna be using for this. We have our oats. I've got some soy milk for today. You can use even just plain water is fine. Another milk of choice. I grabbed some frozen blueberries, which I really love to utilize frozen berries, especially through those long winter months in New York, right? We can save a lot of money this way buying them frozen, and they store a lot longer, so we don't have to worry about them going bad before they're used up. Different nuts and nut butters, walnuts, peanut butter, maybe some chia seeds or flax seeds go in there, a little cinnamon for spice, a little sweetness for maple syrup. So those are my ingredients. And for the equipment, we just need some old jars. So I like to save jars as, you know, you buy a sauce or something that you no longer need. Even this, you know, this old peanut butter jar could turn into the jar that you're going to utilize for this breakfast here. And we're going to go ahead and dump some oats. So I'm making breakfast for 2 more days, and I'll show you some different variations and how this can go out. Our old-fashioned rolled oats, we want to use about a half cup is a good serving there, measured into both of these. Half a cup into our jars. All right. Now we're gonna add a little bit of cinnamon for some good flavor and stir that just by very simply shake your jars around and get that lovely cinnamon aroma. I'm thinking I'll do some chia seeds in maybe one of these. So just a splash. The chia seeds expand a ton and they add a lot of fiber. So you'll need a little bit more moisture in whichever one's getting the chia seeds, but again, a nice little shake and stir. All right. And now we're gonna go for our liquid and our fruit. All right, so let's go with soy milk in both of these. You can utilize whatever milk you want at home, and we're going for half a cup about. So about equal parts and a little bit more in the chia seed one. Again, this is when you can't really mess up. It's gonna turn out pretty delicious either way. So don't be too worried about the amounts here. Different fun fruit combos. So some frozen berries we'll put in one, and let's do frozen berries, chia seed, and then these will get walnuts tomorrow. So some blueberries just go on top. We've got our lid. And it is that easy.
That's it?
That's it. Oh, I did forget, if you want to do a little bit of sweetness, you like your oatmeal with just a pinch of sweetness. I like a little maple syrup. You could do a little honey or a tiny little pinch of sugar. So let's just do like a quarter teaspoon, half a teaspoon. You can play around with the amount of sweetness that's right for you.
It's so fast though, Carly.
That's it. I know. It's it. And the fun thing about these frozen fruits too, Kathleen, is that the frozen colors really like take over that milk. So you're gonna have like a purple overnight oat. If you do the blueberries, you're gonna have, you know, like red, pink overnight oats. If you do raspberries or strawberries, it can get really fun. For this one, I'm thinking we're gonna go, let's see, I have a banana. And I love banana peanut butter as a combo. So we can just slice up a little bit of this banana. Size, just, you know, some little round moons. You could do the quarter moons or the half moons again, depending if you want a small bite or a big bite. You could also mash this banana up and put the mashed banana in there and leave out really the maple syrup, and that mashed sweet banana will give it a great amount of sweetness. A little bit of peanut butter. You could use almond butter, any really nut butter, seed butter will work here, tahini, sun butter, about a tablespoon or so. Or more. It's delicious. And then again, we are just gonna cap that with a lid. Do a bit of a shaky, shaky, shake. And we'll mix kind of the peanut butter up in it as we go tomorrow. Whereas the walnuts will get added on top so that they stay nice and crunchy. So now these just can go straight into the fridge. And I have one that I did last night to show y'all how it expanded. All right, so here is overnight. What you'll notice, the berries kind of rose to the top, but the oats have gotten this more like mucilaginous, and so it's very creamy. That's the overnight oat consistency. So at this point now, I would add my walnuts and enjoy my breakfast. So this is such an easy grab and go option. Like I said, I come back to this all the time, and the recipe has a lot of different variations. So you won't get sick of it. You'll be able to try different flavor combos and utilize different fruits depending what's in season, what you have in your fridge or freezer.
Carly, can you remind us of the breakdown of how much oats per jar?
Definitely. So I like to do, it's about a half a cup of oats, about a half a cup of liquid. But maybe a little bit more if, like you said, you're using those hemp seeds or chia seeds or flax seeds. And then the other thing that you can do is Greek yogurt or another type of plain yogurt. If you are a yogurt eater, you can mix maybe like a 1/4 cup or even a half a cup of yogurt with a little bit more liquid to water it down. And then you get even more protein in your meal there.
And would you eat that chilled or would you heat it up?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's delicious fresh out of the fridge, but the real idea is that you can eat it at room temp too. So this is modeled after a dish that's more European. It's like the muesli style where they leave their oats to soak overnight and then eat it at room temp the next day. I take it out of the fridge and enjoy it. You don't need to heat it unless you want to, but either way, it'll be delicious. So there are overnight oats. I want to check back into what's happening in the oven and see if we have any questions come up while I'm doing that. So let's show everyone, chicken is getting cooked, releasing some of its juices. I know it's not done because it's still pretty soft to the touch there. Let's pop that.
One of our participants said, "Thank you so much for this lesson. I have to go, but I learned so much."
Oh, amazing. I'm so glad you're learning. That's great. And with our veggies, let's pull those out. And because there were kind of so many on the pan here, what I want to do is just move things around a bit. And that way, things that are on the edge can get moved to the center. Things that are in the center get moved to the edges. And the edges is where the cooking is happening the fastest and the most browning is happening there. All right, I also want to mention in terms of roasting, since this is really the main culinary skill you're walking away with tonight, that the more spread out the veggies are on the tray, the faster and crispier they're going to cook. the more veggies that you have on the tray and the closer that they are together, the little bit slower and the more they're gonna steam, because as they're releasing all of their liquids, they're kind of steaming and cooking in those. Delicious either way, but just sort of allowing you to have some more variation depending on what you like. Whether or not questions are coming, there's some more kind of things I wanted to cover about these different dishes. So either way, either Kathleen, you want to shoot me a question, or I can keep going.
I think go for it, Carly. Oh, actually,
okay.
we do have one question. What about other oils aside from olive oil?
Yeah, so different oils serve different purposes. So olive oil is my go-to for sauteing, roasting, adding to steamed things. And that's because it's a 350 smoke point. So the smoke point is how high and hot you can make that oil before it smokes. And smoking an oil is something we really want to try to stay away from in our cooking. And we do that by adding the oil to the pan when we're cooking after it's gotten mostly hot. I really advise people from turning on the pan, adding the olive oil, and walking away. You know, and suddenly you've realized, oh, it's too hot. Now I need to come and cook and autocorrect or correct there. So heat up your pan. When you flick a little bit of water on your pan and it just starts to do that little sizzle and dries up, that's when you know you're ready for your olive oil. Drizzle some olive oil in there. It'll kind of shimmer and sparkle across the pan. Get your food in there and you're off cooking. Now, other oils have different and higher smoke points. So if you want to do something like pan frying or even deep frying, that would be a higher smoke point that you need. So I like grapeseed oil for that. Other oils that I like to keep around in my kitchen are coconut oil and ghee. And the coconut oil is if I want that coconutty flavor. So I really love it in more Asian-inspired stir fries. If I'm doing like a curry or more Indian cuisine, something like that. But for the most part, olive oil is what I'm going through. And I recommend, so I like a dark bottle, and keeping it away from light and heat is really important. Olive oil is, like an alive food, right? Especially if you're buying the cold pressed extra virgin, right? It hasn't been heated above a certain temperature. And so when we keep it below, or we keep it away from heat and light, it allows it to keep all of its lovely anti-inflammatory antioxidants components longer. The dark bottle, away from heat and light, olive oil, buy the largest container that you know that you can utilize in, let's say, 2 months. And as long as you're storing it away from the fridge, you're good to go. And that will be a cost saving thing over time rather than buying the small bottles over and over.
Thank you.
So, and I'd love to maybe touch more what I was just starting to go into there about how can we start to think about saving more money in the kitchen by what we're buying, and also touch more on that idea, that the question that came up at the beginning, which was how long you can store your produce and where to store it. So let's start with if you're buying your produce, right? So maybe you've done batch cooking and you want to do some batch cooking and you've picked a couple different recipes. And so you go to the store and you know you're making that, but you also know that you just want to have some produce around for as the week goes on and you need to get a quick meal going. So I really recommend getting friendly with the root veggies. So those are going to be the sweet potatoes, the carrots, the turnips, the beets. And those will stay in the produce drawer of your fridge for a really long time, like sometimes up to a month if they're not being stored with a lot of moisture in that drawer, which would make them get a little moldy. And so that way you can always have those foods on hand to make a quick potato and add some fried eggs and have a meal right there. I also really love the heartier veggies. So these are going to be like your cabbage, your collards, and your other green leafies. My nose is telling me that the chicken is ready. Excuse me 1 second. I think this is all going to be coming out really soon. Yes, so that's on that bottom tray. So because I used a bottom tray and a top tray, the chicken's coming out a little bit faster. The heat was coming from the bottom there, and so I'm starting to smell that chicken, and I know it's ready. I want to come back to the question we're talking about, but I'll set this aside.
Of course.
Yeah, so your cabbage and collard greens, those curly green kale, those are going to last in the produce drawers a week, sometimes even 2 if it's something like the cabbage. So utilizing those is really awesome. Apples, those can stay for a long time. If I have bananas that are going bad and turning brown quickly, I really love to turn those into frozen food. So I peel the bananas and then I have them, or even just chop them up into smaller pieces in a freezer container and put that so that I can do for smoothies or add those frozens to my, my porridges. That's utilizing fruit. And then we also want to get really comfortable with our legumes. So legumes are gonna be our beans and our lentils and our dried peas. So these are gonna be the way that we can really keep costs down. We're gonna be doing more vegetarian cooking this way, but by utilizing more beans and lentils, you can buy larger packages of them and they store in the pantry. Whereas something like chicken or salmon, you're gonna buy it, have it in the fridge, you need to cook it, or maybe you stick it in the freezer and defrost it later down the road. But I wanna show you, so I am always stocking up on some lentils, some rice, pastas. These can be staples throughout the week and really throughout the year. And how long, so I think I covered how long to keep the veggies, what will last longer. Now let's talk about how to make meals kind of more intuitively and creatively as we go along, but utilizing this idea of the template of the sheet pan veggie that we just did with the chicken. So when you're creating a meal for yourself, you're thinking about 3 different components, all right? You wanna be thinking about what is the protein source that you're getting. So is that gonna be an animal protein or a plant-based protein? So we're either gonna go, you know, chicken, meat to eggs, salmon, a cheese, or we're going to be going with something like a tofu or a lentil, a bean, tempeh. So that's the protein. We're thinking about our rainbow of veggies, hopefully, as many colors that we can get throughout the course of the week. Our leafy greens, our root veggies, our fruits. And then we're also thinking about our more starchy vegetable or our whole grain. So it's really important to keep around things like boxes of pasta, our rice, other whole grains, our oatmeal, quinoa, wheat berries, breads, whole grain breads, so that we can add that starchy carb form to the meal. And then we're starting to create really like a balanced, nutritious meal for ourselves. And that's important because that's what's gonna help us keep our mental clarity and focus with our blood sugar stabilization throughout the day as a student. I'm sure people can relate to that feeling of all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I am so hungry. I cannot think. I got to go quick grab a snack. The more that we can keep that kind of template in mind with the protein and the veggies and the starchy veg or the whole grain, the better our blood sugar will be and we can keep a clear mind through our classes.
Very important.
Awesome. Any other questions coming up? Questions that you have for me, Kathleen?
We don't have any coming in. Let me think. And I so appreciate you talking about things that last a long time, because especially on a budget, it can be really devastating, you know, to spend money on something and then it go bad. So that's so helpful.
It is so frustrating. We want to really be reducing our food waste as much as we can. And over the weeks of doing this batch cooking, you're just going to become more and more comfortable with knowing how much food you can go through, right? It's kind of an experiment every week and figuring out what works. But being able to do things like cook and then maybe put into the freezer is going to help you reduce that over the long run. I want to finish off our dish here and make sure, you know, we're moving towards dinner. I mentioned that balanced plate. So how would I serve this? How are we gonna make this into a complete meal? Because right now we have that protein and the veggie component. I love to serve this with a side of rice or pasta, or you could toss it with a salad green with more like lemon and olive oil to kind of make a quick dressing. But for now, at least, let's see how we know that this chicken is done. So there's a couple different techniques here. We're gonna do the finger test. So that's just a nice gentle prod. And you can think about rare, medium, and well, like different places on your face. So this is gonna be rare in your cheek. Medium is gonna be the tip of your nose. Everyone try it. What does that feel like? And then well is gonna be the tip of your chin. All right, so rare, medium, and well. So that's kind of one way. That kind of gives you an idea. And if you're somewhere in that medium to well, depending on what you like for the chicken, we can go ahead and cut into it. So I'm gonna grab a knife and test out a piece of this chicken to see what color it is on the inside. So we know that our chicken is nice and done when the pink is all gone from the center and we've got a nice white all the way through. You can also tell it's done because the little proteins kind of shred apart pretty easily there. So chicken is done, veggies are done. I know when I can stick a fork through them, they're nice and tender. And the only way I like to finish this off is with some shredded Parmesan. It's really delicious. Adding it at this stage allows it to kind of melt in. You could also add it in when you're making that pasta fresh or over that brown rice. So for now, if I'm batch cooking, dinner time, let's enjoy our dinner with our side grain perhaps, and then store away the rest into a container to enjoy the rest of the week. We've got our overnight oats ready to eat in the morning, and we can clean up our kitchen, and our work for tonight is mostly done.
Delicious.
Delicious, right? Let's see. Do we have time to talk about snacks, Kathleen? Because I know that was something that a lot of your students were wondering about.
Yes, I do have one question about the overnight oats.
Yeah, let's hear it.
How long can they last? Like once you've made them, like how many days do they last?
I like to make 4 days worth.
Wow.
You can have 4 jars from Monday to Thursday, or make it Sunday night and have it all the way through Thursday morning.
That's so great. I hear so many students say that they wake up, you know, right before their class and they don't have time to make breakfast. And this is really a game changer.
This could be a huge game changer. And let's just talk about how long this dish would last while we're at it. Yes. The chicken I like for 3-4 days tops, and the veggies could even go for 5 days.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then maybe really fast, I can show some of the snacks that I pulled out. What we're really trying to do here is match protein with another accompaniment. So I love dips. So we got some bean hummus with some carrots. So that's an option. I love to have just a piece of fruit. So let's say an apple, a banana, or a pear, but then match it with a nut or a seed or a nut butter. So like some peanut butter. And the peanut butter with the protein and fat is gonna help you feel full and satiated longer with that snack. Mm. We can also have bars. So I like the RX bars. You can get at Trader Joe's or other grocery stores. They just have a couple of ingredients, and I think they're pretty great for that. So some ideas for snacks, leftovers as well, like a bit of a smoothie, something that you can kind of just pop in the blender. Rice crackers with any of those dips, or crackers and cheese, a slice of deli meat rolled up with some avocado or lettuce. That can be really quick as well.
That's so helpful. We do have a question. Can you speak to the benefit versus the cost of organic produce, Carly?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to buying organic, you really can choose what it is that you want to be buying organic. We know that the pesticides on our produce do end up in our bodies. So the benefit there is that you're reducing your exposure to the pesticides and chemicals. So with that in mind, we can just be smart and conscious consumers about what it is that we choose to buy organic, depending on what we can afford to do. And I like to direct people to the EWG's database. So that's the Environmental Working Group, and they put out something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So Dirty Dozen being the most heavily sprayed crops that have the highest amount of pesticides. So you would choose those maybe organic if you have the ability, but Clean 15, knowing that you're good to go.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, well, we're nearing the end of the class here, and I just want to, I guess, wrap up by saying thank you again to be back with the Barnard students and working with all the amazing folks at Barnard. Thank you, Kathleen, for organizing this and the amazing tech IMATs at Barnard. I really hope that whether or not, tonight's cooking felt really challenging or super easeful and fun, that over the process of trying and getting into the kitchen and slowly building up that confidence, you're going to learn through trial and error. And that's how we do this. It's a lifelong journey to developing this confidence that we can start by just taking the plunge and just starting with one meal at a time, just trying one new recipe to build up your repertoire, and slowly allowing that process to be something that actually brings enjoyment to your week, can be a break from the student life and studies, a time to get into the kitchen, be creative, allow your senses to come alive and make something really delicious that nourishes your body, and empowers you by knowing that you have the ability to cook this food for yourself. So I'll end there with a big thank you and bon appetit.
Thank you so much, Carly. This was phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge and wisdom with us. I've learned so much, like my brain is exploding. So I think we have gained so much insight and so many tips from you. So thank you so very much for doing this for us. For anybody who came late, this webinar has been recorded. It will at some point in time pop up somewhere on the web. So keep an eye out for that. It is going to be available on the Barnard website along with the 2 recipes that Carly made tonight. So thank you again, Carly, and I hope everybody has a great night.